Thanks for joining us today. This is the Aspen City Council work session for August 7th, 2023. Tonight's agenda has a couple items, interviews for boards and commissions, and then a 2024 City of Aspen Utilities rate consideration, and an update on a council goal work plan for prioritizing infrastructure and maintenance for aging facilities. So we're going to start off with our interviews, and I'm just going to take them in order that we have here. The first one on my list is the APSHA Board of Directors. We have one citizen appointed regular member opening, and we have Carson here reapplying. Come on up, man.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for your service. You have been on the board for how long?
This will be 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. So my initial term was I was on the board, and then it was kind of restructured to have elected officials, and that initial term was 4 years. And so I've served through the 4 years, and looking to do 4 more.
You went through the restructuring, home track being added into APSHA's quiver, and a couple other, a lot of different changes over the last couple years, and really, I think, enhancing and improving APSHA. Is there anything that you'd want to share about the direction that you've seen and how the board is functioning at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the board is functioning very well. I'm really excited. The board has sort of made the priority of taking on capital reserves as a primary issue. That's a challenging issue that's been a problem that's been explored before. And I think the enthusiasm around looking forward to tackling such a difficult problem really is exciting.
That's awesome. I'm going to look for other council members for any questions. Carson is reapplying, as he just said. He's been on for 5 years and chairing, I think, for the last two. I'll look online first. Yeah, Bill, go right ahead.
Thanks, Tori. Carson, thanks for your service on APSHA board. We appreciate it. Thank you for reapplying. A couple of questions from me.
Okay.
Firstly, on the recent issue with the Highlands employee housing units that were supposed to be, there was some agreement to be leased with the music school. Could you explain to me your position on that one?
To think about that. I'm not sure that I can comment on that one.
I'm not sure you can either.
That's an active case that still hasn't been settled. Jim, do you have?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not really quite familiar with the current status of that case, but my understanding that is not finally resolved, and I don't think it'd be appropriate to discuss a particular ongoing action at this time.
Okay, I didn't know. That wasn't a trick question. I didn't know if there was any particular legal circumstances there. I just know that it was, the board decision was a little confusing to me. The collective board decision. You talked a lot about HOA reserves, Carson. Could you explain to me what you think the fundamental issue is with why APSHA owners do not maintain adequate reserves?
I mean, I think that you got a couple of
as a whole, to be clear. I'm not trying to pick on it.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a complicated question. I mean, I think primary reason is generally anybody who's tried to hire anyone to do work has found, two things in trying to hire any sort of contractor to come and do work on the property. One, it takes a long time if you can get them to come out, and two, it's expensive. I mean, so you have affordable housing HOAs that have price caps on the value that the owners can recoup, and a lot of the time they're going out into the free market and competing with free market properties to try and get the same services. So, I mean, for an example, our HOA was looking at, some contractors for for landscaping, and we made a bunch of calls and basically got one bid. I mean, we were sort of, we had asked for 5 or 6, and several just said, we just don't have the capacity to take it on right now. So I think the competition with the free market is one. I think, you have some HOAs that just have decided not to reserve. I think in general, a lot of owners, free market and affordable housing, want their monthly HOA dues as low as possible. And I think that there are, some people that have, in the past, that have been on the boards and have chosen not to reserve for certain items. So, I think that the way forward, it's got to be, it's probably going to have to be a multi-pronged solution. And, certainly, my hope is that we'll find a way to, find some carrots to incentivize people to do the right thing when it comes to reserving for their HOA.
Thanks so much. Again, I appreciate your service.
Welcome.
Ward?
Hi, Carson. Thank you. Am I muted? Oh, thank you for serving. It's been a pleasure and honor to serve with you the last few months. I certainly know that you have a grasp on all the issues, and I feel comfortable that the APSHA board is going in the right direction as far as what the priorities are and some of those really difficult issues that have been hanging out there for over 10 years. That's another one of those wicked problems where we don't have a hammer to make people do what we want them to do or what they should do. But I look forward to working with you for the next year and a half. I'll be on the board and certainly support you in reapplying. Thank you.
Thanks, Ward.
Sam, any questions?
No questions, just thanks for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome.
John?
Yeah, I want to echo Ward's statements. It's been a pleasure meeting you and working with you. I know we're in good hands because you are living the employee housing experience, so you know what it's all about. Look forward to the next 2 years serving with you, Carson.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Next board, we have ARC Advisory Committee. There are 2 regular city-appointed members and current applicants. We have Candace Cross and Anthony Green. And Anthony's in person. Candace, come on up. Yeah, please. Anthony is not here.
Anthony's here. I'm here.
Yeah, well, come on up, man.
Thanks. Hey, Anthony. Hi. How are you?
Thought I saw you earlier. Candace is reapplying. And Anthony, you've applied for this as well as another board?
I did.
Just willing to serve and looking for an opportunity?
That's correct, Tori. I'm looking to serve. Haven't ever done anything like this before, but in a position now where I have some time and would like to give back a little, and that's why I'm here.
Can you just tell me a little bit about your interest in the ARC Advisory Committee?
Yep, sure. Having raised 2 kids here that all were spending a lot of time at that ARC, I was involved that way, and I'm on those pickleball courts all the time, and I'm a big believer in that in Aspen, and thought that would be a good way to fit in.
I'm going to start in room. John, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I guess the obvious one is, which board are you hoping to serve on, or both?
I'm hoping to serve on this board over the other one. I just applied for 2, and I'm happy to do the other one as well, but more involved in the ARC interest.
Right. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sam?
Thank you both for your willingness to serve, and I know the other one you applied to actually is more applicants than spaces, but this one is 2 for 2, so happy about that.
Okay, good. Well, that's good.
I'll go over to Ward.
Yeah, I too noted that you are applying for 2 boards. I know that some boards allow you to only serve on 1 board, and your preference is the ARC Advisory Board. Just a point of clarification, that maybe Jim, you could answer my question. Could somebody serve on 2 boards, 2 of these boards?
No, we are
Wheeler
not.
and ARC?
No.
Okay,
And now I know.
well, thank you both for applying.
Bill, go right ahead.
Thanks, Tori. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Candace. Appreciate your interest in your service. Same question for both of you. What opportunities do you think exist to enhance the experience at the ARC for our community?
Candace, we'll start with you if you could.
I don't necessarily have a personal opinion about that. The reason I'm interested in continuing on the ARC board is I'm really excited to see the business planning process go through. We're about ready to launch the stakeholder survey and just really excited to see the plan that comes out in terms of the program and service recommendations, the pricing strategies, cost recovery goals, et cetera. So I started that work in my first year with the ARC board and looking forward to continuing that in my second year.
Thanks.
I'm with Candace. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't know. I'm just getting on here to learn what's going on there, and I was going to take it from there. So I don't really know what is in the planning phase for the ARC.
Well, let me be more clear. What about the ARC do you think could be better? Operationally, physically, programmatically?
Right, and I guess I would respond by saying, I'm involved very limited in the ARC right now. I used to be more involved when my kids were younger, but I haven't really been involved on the inside, so to speak, lately. So I'd have to get a feel for it before I responded.
I personally am a group fitness kind of person. You'll find me at the Red Brick and the ARC doing those kinds of classes. I'd love to see that schedule be reinvigorated. There's been, there are fewer classes offered today than there used to be. That would be a personal goal, but I'm certainly, again, looking forward to the business plan and the recommendations for how, group fitness, for example, fits in with all the other priorities. So I certainly don't put my personal priorities and interests above, what's right for the city and our region in terms of recreation.
Great. Thanks again to you both.
Thank you. Candace, I had just 1 or 2 questions for you. How is the board working together? And is the workload with business plan evaluation and all the other things that are potentially to come to the ARC, is that more than the board can handle, or?
No, not at all. I don't feel that way. We've actually moved to quarterly meetings, and because we had such a limited monthly agenda, so the quarterly meeting has a little more meat to it, which has been great, and just seems like a more effective use of everybody's time. We do get monthly reports coming from the rec center management that we keep up on, and can certainly feel free to ask questions in the interim months if something comes up. And then just, I think it's also really helped for people to recommit to be there in person at the quarterly meetings versus it was tougher to get there on a monthly basis, especially when you knew you might be traveling 45 minutes for a 20-minute kind of meeting. So quarterly, it seems like we're getting good traction of people making it a priority to be there and meet in person to deliberate on the business at hand, so.
Thank you very much, and thanks for reapplying.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir?
I just wanted to note Ward's question. There are certain exceptions to the restriction in the charter about serving on 2 different boards, but I do not believe that the ARC is one of those exceptions that we've carved out. The Wheeler board is an example of a board that is not deemed a permanent board that has allowed people to be on 2 boards at once. But the ARC is not one of them. I don't know what the gentleman, what other board he applied to, so I may have spoken too soon.
And, Ward, we had a situation where we had somebody serving on 2 boards simultaneously, I believe it was last year even, and we collectively as, at council, determined that we were gonna try to not have that be the situation and utilize more community resources for our boards, but
If the Wheeler was the other board, then that is one of the exceptions to our restriction.
and it was.
Yeah.
It was the Wheeler as well as maybe next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Next gen may also be an
Right.
specific exception.
Thank you for that. Next one up that I have on my agenda is the Building Code Board of Appeals. This is 7 regular members with 6 of them having their expiration this past month. Which doesn't look right, Jim. Yeah, no worries. But we have applicants here, so Sarah Broughton, I believe she's zooming in perhaps. Yep, I've got her online. Chris Bendon, I don't know that he can make it, something has come up for him today. Greg Woods, and I don't see Greg. Oh. And we have Jay Clark. And Stuart Bohart. Come on up.
You got Jeff Compton on there?
I do not.
You do not? I
No.
thought, starting at 4:30.
No, I do not. This is for the Board of Appeals.
Oh, no, I 4 o'clock for the, open boards. I put the application in. Sorry, I had a little problem at the grocery store.
No problem. I do not have your application
Let me,
created here. If you'll just, that's okay. If you'll speak with Mike real quickly, he'll get you sorted. All right. I see a couple of our applicants here. All right. For those of you that haven't served, do you understand the meetings and responsibilities of the Board of Appeals?
I'm Stu. I read the material that was posted and was comfortable with it.
All right, thank you so much. Sarah, can you hear me? And can you, I don't see you.
I don't,
Okay. Oh, yeah, I've got you. Yep, I've got you. Sarah,
was
thank you so
there.
much for reapplying. I appreciate it. How has your experience been being on the Board of Appeals? Do you know how many cases you see per year?
1 or less.
1 or less. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and look at other council members for questions, and I'll start back online. We'll go back to Bill.
Thanks. No particular questions. I happen to know 4 of the 5 of the applicants, everyone except for Jay. I appreciate everyone serving here. I think that Sarah, Chris, Greg, and Stu are all very intelligent and more than capable in this role. So appreciate the service and highly support all of them.
Thanks, Bill. Ward, any questions here?
No, not really. I 1 or less is a great number of appeals and issues to hear, so. There are, I think one of the duties is to recommend, any code, improvements. So I'd encourage you, as those come to your awareness, to communicate to council on that. But I thank all of you for applying, and that's the end of that for me.
Thanks, Ward. John?
Very happy we had so many qualified candidates reapplying and applying. Your resumes are all impressive. Seems like a well-functioning board. Thanks for applying.
Sam?
Yeah, thanks for applying. I'm just happy we have some really wonderful candidates for 0 to 1. applications a year.
Yeah.
Can I
Appeals.
just add something?
Yeah.
If it's, one or less, on the application, you kind of choose, and the other one that I've experienced in is for the Wheeler. I was chair of the Smithsonian Museum of African Art, and I'm chair of the Northwestern Black Museum, and previous board member of the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, and I'm interested in those things. And really, I just wanted to serve and support the city of Aspen. So
Great.
if you're looking to move someone around, that's another area where I have the right background to be useful to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for
Just
applying.
a note here, none of these current members expired. Their terms have expired, but they're still alive and kicking.
That's true. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your time. I want to point out for our viewing audience that the scenic landscape behind Ward is of his own taking, I believe. Is that right, Ward?
Yeah, that was got up at 4:30 to go take that. Took a bunch of pictures that morning. Got a new camera, so I'm inspired.
Right on. Next board that I'm coming to, one second. CCLC, we have 2 regular member open positions, and applicants are Terry Butler, who's reapplying, Charles Cuniff, also reapplying, and I don't think, oh, he did make it, all right. And then Laurel Winton is applying as well. Don't see
Oh, pardon me, Charles.
Laurel online either. Hi, guys. Thank you for taking your time, meeting with us. An extra meeting for you. Terry, I'll start with you. You have been on CCLC for quite some time. You've brought a great perspective being a downtown business owner in the lodging sector. You've seen it all. You're as much an ambassador for the downtown as anybody. But you don't run the residences anymore, I believe. And just tell us, how come you are still willing to give so much of yourself to us? And why are you so excited to do CCLC again?
I guess it's because I've been on it for so long, almost 30 years. And I just feel that having lived downtown for 36 years in the heart of town, that I've got my finger on the pulse pretty much of what's happening down there, and that I can bring a perspective to the CCLC that other people who don't live quite so in the center of town might miss.
And Charles, I wanted to ask you, CCLC oversees the Saturday market and goes through the lengthy application process and weeds those out. That's a big chunk of your year and of your work. Do you think that CCLC has other opportunity for input in the downtown core? Are you happy with the way that CCLC is operating and the board functioning?
Yes, to all of that. I think that one of the things that we're in sort of work session mode about is how much more we could help and involve with, for instance, the malls, the restaurants and the seating, signage, things like that. But we're also we're charged with taking on the 4th of July parade as well. The city moved it over to us from sort of an oversight, and we also judge it, kind of thing. There is plenty of more stuff that we could do if the city were willing to have us spread our knowledge, I guess, is the way to put it.
At your meetings, do you talk about that as a board?
Yes. We've looked in the past at all the alleys, and I actually did a plan for us to review about the alleys and proposals on how the alleys could be activated a little bit more cleaned up, first of all. We're often fielding questions or complaints about the state of the alleys. And that certainly is, if it's Commercial Core Lodging Commission, sort of all the commercial core falls under our sense of purview, even if we don't have the authority over much of it.
I will say as a downtown resident, since CCLC assisted or coordinated, actually probably did some of the loading of cleaning up the alleyways. It's been a market improvement even over the last couple of years since that happened. Yeah, it's noticeable. With that, I'll open it up, and I'm going to start in room. So I'll start with Sam this time.
Great, thank you. Charles, good to see you. Thanks for serving on this board again. I know you're on the Fire Protection District Board, so way to be on both. And then, no questions for you. Terry, 29 years, that's really impressive. I was wondering if I could ask you about the Residence Hotel and the parking situation in front, and how you survived years of that without having a loading or unloading zone.
It was hard, because when I started the hotel 35 years ago, there was a loading zone. There were 2 parking places, and then one got taken away, then both got taken away. But as long as things were not parallel parking, they were, what do you call that?
Angled.
Regular parking. Angle parking. We lived through it, you know, and fortunately in the wintertime, most people don't rent cars. In the summertime, I would buy parking passes and give them to park underground here. And that worked out pretty well. And so we survived. You know, fortunately, I only could sleep 25 people. And so, and most of those were couples and families. So it wasn't a terrible problem. We lived through it, and the people forgave me for not having parking.
That's good. I'm glad to hear
But the
that.
building was built in 1886 before cars, see? So there was no parking allotted at that time.
That makes sense.
Horse rail's gone, right?
Across the street.
And you sold the business a year ago?
1 year ago, actually 13 months ago.
Nice. Are you still operating any business in the downtown?
Well, I still live there.
You still live there?
I'll live
okay.
there for the rest of the lease term, the next 15 years. And I don't want to be the face of the business because it's their business, and so I'm really trying to be very respectful about, because for so long I was the only one running it. And I help as much as I can, and we probably talk 2 or 3 times a week. And anytime I can be of help, I will be. But, you know, it's their business, and they're doing a great job, I think. Wonderful people I sold to.
Oh, that's amazing.
Do you know them?
I don't, no. But they asked about the parking situation recently, so that's why it's serendipitous that you're here.
Well, I noticed today that it had gone back to not parallel parking. What's it called again?
Angle.
What?
Angled.
Angle parking. I don't know why I'm having a trouble with that.
Angle parking?
Today it's angled.
Oh,
Go figure, guys.
I didn't.
Whoever shows up first.
I did not know that. It's just someone just set the trend today. Okay. Well, thank you for your years of service. I feel like you set the record for most years on a board or commission. I'd love to know that, but thank you.
You're welcome. And actually, Bill Dunsmore, I think you interviewed fairly recently, has been on it 1 year more than I have.
Oh.
And he
okay.
was the former owner of the bakery. What's it?
Main Street Bakery.
Main Street Bakery.
Okay. Institutions. I love it. All right. Thank you.
John?
No, thank you both for your years of experience here in town that add to. Thanks for your years of experience here in the community that add to what you can give us through your time at CCLC. Both of you. Appreciate it.
Ward, any questions here?
Well, I've been attending meetings at CCLC, I think, since I got on city council as a non-voting member, more of an interest, and I appreciate all the work that Charles and Terry have dedicated themselves to over the years, and I look forward to them both being on the board and an expanded role at CCLC. I think that there can be some additional duties taken on, and I've encouraged them to work on a budget and ask for a budget if there's something that they need money for that can help them and help the city pursue the goals of CCLC. And I've missed the last few meetings with retreats, etc., but look forward to seeing you guys all in person soon.
Thank you, Ward.
Thanks, Ward. Bill?
Thanks, Tori. Hi, Charles. Hi, Terry.
Hi,
Terry, I
Bill.
don't know how recent your new hairstyle is, but I like it a lot. Thanks for your many years of service. I had the pleasure of serving with you guys at one point in time.
About 2 years, I think.
Yeah, if not more, I can't remember. It's pre-kids, so my memory is foggy
You
from
were the chairman for
that
a
era of
while.
my life. Charles, you talked about taking on more responsibility, and I was curious, was CCLC ever consulted on the living lab experiment on
No,
Cooper?
no, we were informed about it well into its
Not before.
implication, because we asked to know more about it.
What do you think each of you might have said if you were consulted on it?
I personally would have discouraged it.
Same, Terry?
And me,
Yeah,
I would have discouraged it.
great. Well, I think that since I know you both so well and know you to be very capable, I don't have any more questions, but was curious about that. Thank you again for your service.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all the years that you've done and
Yeah.
look forward to more.
Happy to, it's a pleasant group of people. I really enjoy going to the meetings.
It seems like the board is functioning really well, working together really well, supporting each other. The one thing that I noticed, though, is that I don't know that there's an actual retail kind of sector representative currently.
Amanda does, yeah.
What is her business? Where's Amanda?
She owns a children's shop in the Mill Street building,
In the Mill Street
on
building.
the second floor.
Awesome.
And we have a recent person that's from the lodging group. as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been a good addition.
No, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Kiki's also runs an art gallery.
Right.
So quasi retail.
Quasi retail. Thank you, guys.
Kiki.
Oh, Kiki, oh, yeah. Yeah, Kiki, she's been on for 10 years.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great day. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, guys.
And I'm looking for Tracy Anderson for the Grants Steering Committee. Grants Steering Committee needs one regular member.
Hi,
Well, hi.
thanks for meeting with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Your application is very thorough, and you've answered most of my questions just with what you've written. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to other members, and this time we'll go online, and we'll start over with Ward.
Thank you. Tracy, yes. I was just wondering if you felt conflicted at all in the fact that Aspen CUNY Foundation, I think, grants, hands out grants, and this is a grants committee. I could see that it would be the experience that you have would be greatly beneficial to the grants committee, but just curious to explore that. That came to my mind, and we certainly see your husband a lot more than we see you.
It's a really good question. It's one that I disclosed in my application and in my service as a volunteer on the Arts and Culture Committee for the last 2 years. And so in terms of conflict of interest, I feel like this role in my work, not only as a grant reviewer, but the potential of being on the steering committee, while there could be some conflict, I'm very mindful of that. And I have discussed that with not only my colleagues and employer, but I would also be looking to the steering committee chair and staff. If there were any conflicts that would come up in this work, I would certainly recuse myself from that. Over the last 2 years, conflicts have not arisen, but I'm very mindful that in my decision-making to be impartial, and I would certainly bring any concerns that I had in this new role.
Thank you. I trust you and your judgment, but I felt I should clarify that. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Ward. Bill?
Sorry, it was muted there. Nice to meet you, Tracy. Thanks for
too.
applying. You're obviously highly qualified for this role. Appreciate your interest, and I think you'd be great at it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. John?
And we like your husband a lot.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to City Hall. Looking forward to seeing more of you.
Thank you very very much.
And you are actually overqualified.
I'm honored to serve. This has been a privilege, quite honestly, to serve the last 2 years, give back to community, work with staff. I have learned a lot, and that's something that I feel that I can also bring in this role is cross-pollination and collaboration. I think these kinds of processes are only better from learning from one another. So what I hope is to bring my experience to this work and vice versa, which I already have. So thank you.
Now, I'm really psyched about this board. I think you
Thank you.
obviously are going to work great together.
My pleasure.
Or continue to. Thanks.
Yeah, I expressed a lot of the same sentiment as everyone else has said. I was just more curious on a clarification about how this works. You are on the City of Aspen's Arts and Culture Citizen Grant Review Committee. Doesn't the Grant Steering Committee appoint people to that committee? Or?
That was also an application process as well, and so should I be considered for this role, that would be a transition of roles. I would no longer serve on the review committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was like clarifying, but then you would be appointing people to probably replace yourself, right?
I'm not sure, I think that might be a staff role, but that would something I would seek
I thought I thought
leadership
that was part of the
from
Grant
John
Steering
and
Committee,
team.
but anyway, I'll get that
It's a
clarified.
good question.
I was just curious. Yeah, it looks like someone's clarifying.
To be clear, she would appoint new members as a steering committee member.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Thanks, John.
I'm just always trying to understand the committees better, but yeah, thanks.
Me too, it's learning every day.
Thanks for applying and taking that step up to
Thank
this
you.
one.
I get an opportunity to just ask you a question about grants, and you know, it underwent a transition and a rebolstering, if you will, and a little bit more clarity of process, perhaps. And in it, you know, we've seen some grantees receive less than maybe they have in the past. We've seen an increase in applications. We also saw City Council approve an increase in available funds. Do you have any general comments about that inherent conflict when there is more demand than supply? And do you have any comments?
Yeah, in my experience, that is consistent across the board, to be quite honest with you. I am currently, and my team is involved in our community grant-making process, and that is a very similar issue. It becomes more challenging with each and every year, but what I can say for the city's process, I am very, very impressed with the process and the rubric that has been put forward to not only guide our grantees in writing and submitting of their applications, and as a volunteer reviewer, it really gave me strong criteria and my fellow committee members to be very thoughtful in our analysis of what is being asked, and thinking about impact that the work is made in the community and how that investment is made from the city's perspective. And we struggle with that as well in our conversations, and we don't take it lightly. What I really love about the city's process as well is that after we have our initial scoring, which we are very well trained and prepared for, understanding what is the goal of the program and the guidance that council sets, we come back as a team and discuss, saying, I've got questions about this, or help me understand this, how are you seeing this? So I can't say that that alleviates the supply versus demand, but I can say that the process that the city puts forward is very thorough and thoughtful, and hopefully more dollars will be coming into community through this process to support the good work of our nonprofit organizations.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's all questions for you. We appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next board is Kids First Advisory Board. We have 2 open positions, and we have 2 applicants reapplying, Sue Wei and Chad Schmidt. I don't believe Chad is able to attend interviews right now, and I'm looking for Sue was online, and there she is.
Mayor, my wife is on this committee, so I'm gonna recuse myself from this board.
All right, thank you, Ward. Sue, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We got you. Thank you so much for your service already on this, and thank you for reapplying. You know, similar to comments I made earlier about another board, you've been through a couple of years of some real growing, not pains, but some real growing around Kids First and around our child care and our services and scholarships that we provide. How do you feel about the current board, Kids First Advisory Board, how it functions as a board, or are there any changes or suggestions that you might have in its process?
I think it has changed. As you well know, I think we have Shirley as a director that was there for many, many years. She grew into her job and, had expanded it to a lot of different committees and usefulness in this valley for childcare. We now have Megan and Nancy, who are co-directors, who, are taking on a little different role than what Shirley had. I think the things that are still important to everybody is, having the ability to continue to support staffing needs for this valley by the initiatives that the county and the city of Aspen have done, which is really super important. It is also the changes that Megan and Nancy have made is to, put efforts back into the current child care staff feeling part of a bigger part of a community and some decision making, so that they're spending more time with directors, looking at educationally how they could be supported. And so I think those changes are already moving forward. I believe the city itself has made some changes in having more staff people overseeing or being part of Kids First Board, whereas in the past it was Shirley who was solely there, and now it's definitely working with your whole staff on initiatives when it comes to budgets, when it's coming to major decision makings, which I believe has been important.
Thank you for that. And one more question for you. And we've been trying to make decisions for our community, child care best interest, we continually have conversations around demand, the conversation around accurate wait lists, and then also on the staffing side, where are we getting our qualified service providers, and are we going to be able to grow those from the inside or from our valley? Could you just maybe make a brief comment as to how do you feel about your ability to have information that helps inform the Kids First Advisory Board on the conversations that they're having? Does that make sense?
I'm trying to restate it or make sure, that I'm definitely.
I guess easily said is, do you have the same outstanding questions that many of us do around the need and the capacity issues that we talk about?
Yeah, we definitely we still have capacity issues and we still have need. That is definitely going to continue. I do believe that the challenge with that is the staffing component, which is what you had just stated, correct?
Yes.
And I think there are a couple of things that I know come up, and that is the housing component for childcare staffing. As we know, the fire department, we need more people in the fire departments, and we need more people in the medical field. And, the housing component always comes up in question as to what more can we do for childcare? What more can the city do? And so that's definitely, those concerns are definitely there. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, enough of it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. We'll go in room, and I'll start with Sam.
No questions, Sue. Just perfect candidate. So happy you're reapplying. Look forward to more work on this board. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. John?
I would echo that. Thanks for your continued service.
Then I'll go over to Ward. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Bill?
Thanks. Stu, nice to meet you. Thanks for your service. I'm curious if you think the Kids First Board could have done anything different to handle the yellow brick situation last year or 2 years ago, if anything at all, and if so, what that might have been.
I think the Kids First Board made the decision at that time based on what was currently happening within a lack of childcare for younger kids. And a mission statement that the board had was to increase capacity. So, at that time, that's where the direction was moving. And that's where all the decisions were based on, hey, if we got someone to work one more day for at least a younger age group, would that help?
Got it. Thanks so much.
I think it's always sort of hard, when you're trying to you're trying to relate to what's good for the business, what's good for the guests, the kids, and then what's good for the staff. And I think it's always that's where you're at, and sometimes decisions, a decision's made that you believe is maybe a decision's made because it's not hitting all three of those components.
Understood. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bill. Sue, thank you again for the service that you've done. Thank you for reapplying. We appreciate your work.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for all the work you have as a board. And, basically, as city people putting efforts towards childcare and having it be a priority for this community. I appreciate that. And, with Burlingame 3 coming in and, 80 new places coming up and, hopefully the community is going to grow. And thank you for your attention to childcare because young families are what our future is.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks.
The next one on my list is Next Gen Advisory Board. Marianne Crow. I'm looking online. We've got her online. Move her over. Marianne?
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
We got you. Thank you so much. This is the Next Gen Advisory Board. There are some open positions here, both regular members and an alternate. Marion, how are you doing today?
Oh, great. I'm actually in New Zealand right now, and I'm just about to go skiing, so it's pretty good.
You seem to have a southern accent. Where are you from?
Yeah, I am from New Zealand. That's where I lived, I guess, most of my life. But I have been living in Aspen. I was living in Aspen like seasonally for 7 years, and then the last 3 years full time.
And how did you hear about
So
the
now I just go on holidays to New Zealand.
How did you hear about the Next Gen Advisory Board?
Actually, my neighbor told me about it. I live in Apshire housing, and so I'm just walking up a hill. I've been trying to make the HOA in the neighborhood and the community that I live in better. And I guess I've been moving kind of slowly and haven't been as enthusiastic as I have about improving our neighborhood. And my one neighbor, his name is Michael Miracle, was like, you know, you're not having so much luck here. But there's this advisory board that you would be great for, and it might be another way for you to get involved and make the community that you live in a bit better.
And then,
So it's through my neighbor.
well, thank you so much. And have you either attended a Next Gen Advisory Board, or have you talked to any current members? Do you know anything about the actual board?
I do know that it's for people under 40, which is me. And I think it's a great idea. Just, I feel like a lot of people, by the time they sort of maybe have the time and energy and experience and willingness to be involved in local government, etc., they're a bit older and they're not always in touch with younger people and their needs and wants. So I think it's a really good idea. I just read a little bit online. It says you have to live and work in Aspen, and they're trying to make about half the people fit in the urban growth boundary, which I live on 7th Street, so I fit in there. But I haven't attended any meetings.
Thank you. I'll start online. Ward, welcome back.
Thank you. Tori, you asked the two questions that I was going to ask if you've ever attended a meeting, and do you know any of the issues that are current with NextGen? And I don't think NextGen has been in front of City Council for a number of years. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually heard they've been having trouble making a quorum or something. So, sorry, so interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have no more questions.
Thanks, Ward. Bill?
None for me. Thanks so much.
John?
Thanks, Marion.
I guess
Thank you.
I guess Next Gen Board meets once a month, or are they currently meeting?
They try.
I guess my main question is, can you make all the meetings?
I guess it depends when they are. I typically work during the day, so if they were in the evenings, that would be preferable. I work for the school district, and my work is a little flexible, but I generally have to be like present at work. I can't always just like pop out for meetings. I don't have kind of like an office style job, so it would mostly depend on when they were, but would probably just try, I mean, everyone would just have to try to figure out a time that works for everyone, I guess.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming they're the same day every month, and you'd be able to.
Typically, like third Wednesday at noon has been it, but they are figuring out what might work still.
At any rate, I appreciate your enthusiasm. We would love to get Next Gen up to a quorum, so I'll support this candidacy. Thanks.
Sam?
Yeah, Marianne, thank you. I think you bring a valuable perspective. And on a side note, I studied at the University of Otago for my study abroad years, so I can appreciate that coming from me.
Ah, cool, that's it. That's where I went to uni too.
I knew it. So thanks. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Marion. We appreciate your time tonight, and we will let you know very soon.
Oh, sorry, I think you.
No, can you hear us still?
Oh, yeah, now I can.
Okay, we're just saying thank you for your time tonight, and we'll let you know very soon.
Okay, great. If you have any questions, you can email me, and super happy to answer anything you might have.
Thank you, Marion.
Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Have a wonderful night. Our next board is the Open Space and Trails Board.
Right.
We have one applicant reapplying. However, Howie is not able to interview with us this evening. So we will move forward, and I believe that will bring us to the Wheeler Opera House Board. There are 2 open positions. We have 2 members reapplying for their position. That's Nina Gabinelli, Jessica Childs. Anthony, yeah, you.
Should I excuse myself from that, or what are your thoughts, Tori?
No, we'll talk to you. We appreciate you applying, and we appreciate your, openness to other boards, and we'll see what happens. So come on up. And we've got David Crowley, who is online. And David, you have a hand raised, or just saying hi? You just muted?
Unmute.
You are unmuted. David, I was just saying that you have a hand raised, a digital hand raised. I didn't know if you were raising your hand or just saying hi.
I just want to make sure I was here.
Gotcha.
That the council was aware that I'm here.
All right, thank you so much. As I said, counselors, Nina and Ziska are reapplying. Anthony interviewed with us a little bit before, but also has interest here in the Wheeler as well. And David, where are you calling in from?
My son is in practice right now at junior golf at the municipal course, and he broke his leg earlier in the summer, and my wife suggested that he not be unaccompanied, so here I am.
All right. Well, thank you for making time and joining us tonight. To Anthony and David, do you know the meeting schedule for the Wheeler Board and the roles and responsibilities? David?
You just froze.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Okay. Do you know the meeting schedule and the role and responsibilities for members of the Wheeler Opera House Board?
The responsibilities I'm a little unclear on. I've served on nonprofit boards back east. My family and I moved here 2 years ago. Full-time, we've been coming part-time for 16 years, so we're Snowmass folks, but of course, we know the Wheeler. I've been going to the Wheeler for 20 years. The schedule's not an issue. I'll be able to handle the meetings wherever they may fall. I do coach at ABSC on the weekends only. During the day, but I can't imagine that would be a conflict. I'm out by 4 o'clock every day, or it's every Saturday, Sunday.
Hey, thank you for that. Same question.
Yep, so being a 35-year full-time resident of Aspen and going to the Wheeler for all those years, I don't know the schedule of the meetings, and I don't really know the responsibilities of the members, but love the Wheeler, and would love to serve somehow, some way, so.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Let's start online. I'll start over with Bill.
Thanks, Tori. Thanks to you all for your service, for applying, for your interest. Same question for all of you. What do you think, from your personal perspective, could the Wheeler be doing better?
Shall I start?
Yeah, go right ahead, David.
I actually have a very deep business background. Believe it or not, I even, with a partner, owned a movie theater called Visions Cinema Bistro in DC. So I have a pretty deep background in terms of the movie business, independent theater. He eventually bought me out when my sort of real estate career, commercial real estate, I'm a broker still after 36 years. And he sort of bought me out, but I really got my feet wet in terms of how the movie business really works. And I just adore going to the Wheeler and attending all the various film festivals or sort of what the programming that the Aspen film has done is just excellent. I'd like to see a lot more of it. I put in my application under comments. But I think the other underlying value I do bring is I do understand there's at least one or two or three third-party leases in place, in essence making the Wheeler, or what I assume the city of Aspen, the landlord within the same structure. And I have some background in that. I negotiated the lease for our theater business 20 plus years ago. And I have, I don't know, 250 leases under my belt in my career over the years. And I think I could bring that aspect of my business background as a board member.
Thank you, David. And Ziska, I'll just start with you and then we'll go across. The question to you was, is there anything that you see from your own perspective that the Wheeler could be doing better?
Yes.
Would you like to
Sit back.
share some, general topics of areas that you think there could be improvement?
Oh, you're going to be so sorry you said it that way. If you open the door for me, Tori, bless you. 4 main points. The asset is underutilized. We've got low community outreach. We need to pursue operational excellence, much more so than we are doing now. And we need to pursue a potential business plan of having a safe incubator or out-of-town trial space. And I can support all 4 of those statements with data and observation.
What was the fourth?
Ziska, could you elaborate on your last point for me, please?
Which point?
The incubator
Your last
space?
point, the incubator safe space, please.
This is part of my research going into city-owned and operated facilities, which we've got one in Denver called DCPA. They have their data online, easily accessible and transparent. They've had a 19-year relationship with Disney. We've had a 13-year relationship with HBO, so it's not out of our wheelhouse. We just are not doing it now. And during that 19 years, 3 of the shows which they did Broadway tryouts for, 2 of which went to Broadway, 1 which did not. Frozen, Little Mermaid, Lion King. Lion King and Frozen went to Broadway, Little Mermaid did not. We have experience in 1986 with Lily Tomlin, with The Search for Intelligent Life in the Universe, which was developed by Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner here at the Wheeler Opera House, and then had 2 Broadway runs, the original run and the revival, and a film, and garnered a Tony Award and a bunch of other things. So when I'm talking about an incubator space, I'm talking about a safe space with our local audience in which you have a small and intimate space where you can try out new work. And if I may, I would like to read you a comment from a frequent theater goer, not only in Aspen, but around the world, who, when I mentioned this to them, their response was, we have a unique, sophisticated and curious audience, and innovation could be part of the programming. And if it was successful, if it was a successful business model and were implemented, it would ensure a steady flow of programming into the future, because there are always new shows in the pipeline. So that is a huge opportunity which I haven't seen us jump on. And the 3 previous points all lead up to what can we do to be better? And that's operational excellence and incubator are the 2 top of my list.
Thank you. Same question?
Well, to follow that, I'd have to educate myself a little bit more on what's happening at the Wheeler. You know, there's been some shows and some events there that I've missed. I'm not sure the marketing is up to par, but that could be my fault too. So I'd have to just get educated more on what's going on there and take it from there.
Thank you. Nina, same question?
Sure. I would have to agree with Ziska's first part that I do believe the space is underutilized. I think it's a difficult partnership with the city of Aspen and a theater space, but I think I think Lisa's doing a great job of trying to marry the two together, understanding that a theater operation is outside the norm of normal city operations, and trying to have it work congruently with the rules and regulations of the city is a struggle. And I do think that the space itself could offer more opportunities for communities members as well as a community space, as well as bringing in more, not tryout things, but the idea of being able to be a space where people can workshop, let's put it that way, their works for an audience that is willing and loving to go to the theater. I mean, if we open the door every day, I'm sure we could put people in the seats. It's not a problem of finding an audience, it's finding the right marriage of opportunity and staffing. It's tough to staff it that much, because that's been a problem in the past. Of, once we get busier, the staff is working more. So I know that that's a difficult, it's a difficult thing to look at for a theater versus a city office.
Thank you, Nina.
Thanks to all of you. Appreciate it.
Ward?
Hi, everyone. Both Ziska, I've heard your name pronounced Ziska and Ziska. Set me straight once and for all.
It's European, so I is pronounced E, it's Ziska.
Thank you.
Oops.
The same question is Pepke and Pepka. The Germans pronounce it Pepka.
Exactly.
Actually, Papka, but who's arguing?
I've answered
So
to
both-
many different names,
both-
Ward. Go away. Yeah, just
All right.
call me anything, I'll probably answer.
Late for dinner. Ziska and Nina both feel that they're underutilized. And Nina mentioned, I have the same questions for both of you and some of these objections to how the Wheeler is being run. Have you brought these concerns up in board meetings, and what's the reception at the board been to these ideas? And if you haven't brought them up, why not?
I'll go first. So we are an advisory board, so we just give our opinions as to what actually ends up happening. That's not really in our hands. COVID and shutdown and the pandemic in 2020 has been something that we have been recovering from. So Lisa was brought in right at the same time that was happening. So, trying to schedule in an era of uncertainty was challenging for everyone. And I do believe that by saying that it's underutilized, it's not because we haven't, I just don't think we've gotten back to where we were pre-pandemic. That's the way I feel about it.
Ziska?
Operational excellence, I've certainly brought that up directly to Lisa and to members of staff about particular programming. I haven't gone into the detail that I just sort of delved into for this moment in time. Underutilize the asset. There has been talk at the board level about programming, which is within our remit, but as far as the number of nights that are dark and the number and the amount of occupancy, that officially is not in our remit. So it's questionable whether that's something we bring up at the board level. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that is something at the government level where we're sitting right now. So it would be more effective, in my opinion, to discuss that with the council and with management. and maybe even more effective as an individual as opposed to an advisory board member. Because, as Nina said, as an advisory board, our ability to express how direction is limited. We are not a board of directors.
I'm going to ask this question of all of you. Nina particularly said that some of the rules and regulations of the city seem to be barriers. And so my question is, since it's been a long time since the Wheeler Board has met with City Council, I don't recall seeing any recommendations from the Wheeler Board. And if the advisory, admittedly it's an advisory board, but if no suggestions are made, no actions can be taken. So what does David, Anthony, Ziska, and Nina, what could the city do differently that would make the experience at the Wheeler better?
I'll start here in room with Nina.
I don't fully understand both sides of the argument, let's put it that way, or both sides of the understanding, both sides of the way things operate with a city-owned theater. I just know the theater world really well, Ward, and we don't operate in a 9-to-5, 40-hour-a-week, and that just isn't the way theater happens, period. Never has been, never will be. And so to try and put those guidelines onto staffing for a theater, it becomes very challenging. And I don't want to, I can't find the answer to that. I just know that that is one of the difficulties that the Wheeler faces. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I think if you have specific ideas on how it could be better, that I would really, as a council member, I think everybody that sits on council wants the Wheeler to be the best it can be, and the physical structure on the outside, I mean, it's magnificent. And Ziska, you took me and my wife on a tour of the Tabor Opera House, and to look at those two buildings and what a rec can do for the Wheeler is amazing. But what goes on within the walls of the Wheeler is what you guys can really control and advise on. So I'm just encouraging all of the applicants and the whole Wheeler Board to, if there are things that can be done better, to come to council, because we want it to be the best it can be.
Thank you.
Anthony or
Same question,
Yeah,
David?
it'll be hard for you to answer this one.
Yeah,
Context
I have some ideas, but I'll let it go. I don't know that I'm qualified to speak on this, but is there any way there could be a representative on the Wheeler Board to come to council and present the issues or ideas? I don't know. I really don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
Agreeing with Nina on most, if not 100% of what she said. Two very different ways of management. But we are performance-driven, and that's, right now you got 254 days of dark in that theater out of 365. You got 70% of dark. And that's including the music school time. So we're not looking at cutting back performances in order to cut back staff time. We're trying to find a way to increase staff and staff time and, again, operational excellence in order to give trust and confidence to your event coordinators so that we can book acts that will do more than fill the house with 29 people or 60 people or 80 people, because right now you've got 20% of your performances that are under 25% in the audience. And that's sad. That's sad for the performers. That's sad for the audience. I'm not saying that any of those performances are not worthwhile. I'm just saying, do you have to have a performance that has an audience of 29 in a 500-seat theater? Isn't there someplace else that's better suited for that audience so that we can then bring more of the community into the theater on a consistent basis? So the basic values of the theater business, I mean, financials, we don't do biannual financials, we don't do annual financials, we do daily or weekly financials, because you live day to day with how many people are in that audience. It's a whole different mindset. And to try and do what works in this building, in a performing arts center, I'm sorry, guys. You've been on a downhill slide. And the numbers, the attendance numbers and the performance numbers show that blatantly. And that's what you have to pay attention to first. So what does that take? Quite frankly, I don't know how to marry the two, because the only successful iteration I've seen of this is the one which I did the deep dive into with DCPA, talking directly to the technical director from 2000 to 2008. And he quite frankly said it was because we hired the best people, it's because we hired people that were known in the industry, and because the big players could come in and say, okay, we know who's the head of the scene shift crew, and we know we won't go into overtime on our load in, we won't get yellow carded, we won't run into problems because we trust these people. The theater industry is almost smaller than Aspen as far as the number of people involved in it. We don't all know each other, but we're less than 2 degrees removed from each other. And to try and, trust the people that are trying to vet your potential workforce who are in the industry. And yes, it may seem like nepotism, but honest to God, it's how we work. We call up people and we say, do you know? Or do you know somebody who knows? And whether they rest on their reputation. But that's not the way that government can work. Government has RFPs that you have to go through, all of that. And your RFPs for the rigging, the 3 biggest companies that you sent those RFPs out to them, threw them in the wastepaper basket. There wasn't the basic information needed to respond, to even take the time out of their day to respond to that RFP. You didn't have the grid height, you didn't have the proscenium width and depth, you didn't have the depth of the theater, you didn't have the wing space, you didn't have the basic information that they would trust. So it's that kind of information that you need to integrate into management so you can let people who are theater professionals do their job.
David, do you remember the question?
If you could restate it just in summary form.
Well, there might not be a whole lot left to answer to this.
I second quite a bit of what I heard from the other applicants, certainly.
Yeah.
But I will certainly second the fact that I will just trumpet my business background into saying that I'm certain everyone is certainly aware that Wheeler has a tremendous endowment that helps fund it, but the number of empty dates, I definitely was going to touch on that point. 70% of the time the theater's dark, but of the 30% where it is programmed, I went to an opera class, opera training, and watched it with the music festival last week that my friend Andy Einhorn put on. Why can't we do, 10 times that number? They only do it, I think, once a week, as I recall, maybe twice, Tuesdays, Saturdays. Why can't more of those events be programmed with the festival? Why can't we have 3 more film festivals added? Why can't there be, there used to be something we put on in our theater, which was purely a foreign film festival only. We also used to have an amateur film, almost like a pull together a film in 48 hours, and they all get screened at the theater, at my old theater I was involved with in Washington, D.C., and basically the audience would vote on the winner. We had every single seat filled in our theater for this because everybody had a friend who had a friend who wanted to make an award-winning film. So I got plenty of ideas, and as I mentioned, there is a business element to the Wheeler, which is unique in a sense that they must operate as a sort of a master landlord over that wonderful building, which brings in so many complications in terms of being that old. But at the same time, my last count, I think they have 4 separate tenants, separate leases within the structure itself, and I think I could be quite a benefit as an advisor with my background in real estate, commercial real estate, retail leasing, essentially.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, David. Thank you for being able to Zoom in with us tonight. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. That is our last board and commission interview for today. So why don't we switch over? I think our next item on our agenda is the electric and water rate study. And why don't we take just about 5 minutes, guys, so you can get up, stretch your legs, or whatever you need to do. 5 minutes and we'll be right back.
Yeah, Tori, we have more humidity here, that's for sure. Absolutely.
All right, we are back. We just took a quick break, but this is our work session for August 7th, 2023. We got through with boards and commission interviews, and now we are on to our council goal of infrastructure and maintenance for aging facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, City Council. Tyler Christoff, Deputy Public Works Director. I'm joined by Pete Strecker, our Finance Director. We're here tonight to talk about the council work plan. Tonight's focus will be on prioritizing infrastructure and aging facilities. Similar to your last work session on council goals, we're here to make sure that staff milestones match council's intention and are responsive to the goal language that was crafted. So tonight, as I said, we're focused on prioritizing infrastructure and aging facilities. The goal language that you adopted during your June 20th resolution is up on the screen. With this type of infrastructure focus, I wanted to point out that nationally, the American Society of Civil Engineers rates America's infrastructure at a C-, as well as rating Colorado's infrastructure at a C-. So in case you don't remember where you sit with a C or C-, that's mediocre or requiring attention. And Aspen is really no different. Traditionally, infrastructure in our community has been installed in phases, and this means that, that sections of our infrastructure typically come of age or approach the end of their useful life around the same time. The infrastructure we enjoy today is really a significant investment that was gifted to us by previous generations, and our decisions today on this infrastructure really have a multi-generational impact. So as staff, we're really excited that council prioritizes this goal. It allows us to double down on our efforts on this already foundational infrastructure for both citizens today and into the future. So in the context of these milestones, we wanted to give council a quick idea of what this looks like from a schedule and effort perspective. You'll note that a lot of these infrastructure efforts are focused around your annual budget proceedings. And so you'll see staff returning to City Council during those budget periods and prior to those budget periods for many of these efforts. And with that, we'll jump into milestones, and I'll turn it over to Pete. Thanks.
Obviously, one of the council goals is prioritizing kind of the upkeep of our existing buildings, our infrastructure, things of that nature. Really, we do this on an annual basis every year, and we do this through the budgeting process. I've shared with you kind of the schedule we follow internally from basically kickoff all the way through council approval and then adoption through the budget process. Really, when we do this work internally, we go through a number of steps. Some of those really include looking at life safety issues as kind of the highest priority for slating in projects in the next couple of years. We follow that closely with kind of our advisory boards, which you've been chatting about for a number of seats just recently, and kind of some other community input, trying to hear what's the latest in terms of experience at the rec center, experience on our trails or parks, how the driving does or does not go down Main Street, even though it's not our own asset. So we really take those things into consideration. And departments are kind of doing that all internally and kind of in isolation from each other. For 2024, Tyler and I actually brought back something which was bringing every department into the room before we kind of set our new plans for the next couple of years, and sitting down with everybody and talking about who had what as kind of their high priority items and slated in which years for the next couple of years. And we did that specifically to look at economies of scale for the community, but also the level of disruption throughout town and where was that going to happen? Could we leverage trying to going into one location once and maybe doing more work at a time? So sometimes we were shuffling projects forward or backward in certain cases. It also, again, gave us better opportunities, I think, for doing some contract work. So we're really trying to take advantage of that this year. Lastly, obviously, cost comes into play, and you all have seen a lot of recent contracts for approval. Some of those contracts, and you'll see in some of those financial impact sections on the memos, that projects are higher than expected. You've been hearing from us quite a bit at the table lately about how inflation has really driven up some of these project costs. So that all gets factored into how do we prioritize the projects overall. Do you have anything to add?
No, I guess I'd just highlight again the coordination efforts that go on internally really allow us to recognize those economies of scale and mitigate impacts to the community. I think Pete's group, as well as the departments that do capital projects, have really put forth a large effort to coordinate their annual capital spends to utilize those dollars most efficiently.
The next item kind of tails from the end of the last statement, which is cost. Certainly, council has an opportunity, if it wishes, to explore not only cash funding specific projects, but also using debt financing. The city obviously entertains the highest credit rating possible at a AAA rating. We are now higher than the federal government, so that's something to be said. The city overall has about $55 million in outstanding principal balance due on its issued debt thus far. Over $10 million of that will actually roll off by the end of 2025, so just a year and a half away. Most of that will be in the Parks Fund. The two remaining big ticket items obviously are the financing for this building that we're in today, as well as the Aspen Police Department, both of which completed over the last few years. And we did 30-year issuances on both buildings. In terms of kind of how we're looking forward right now, you don't typically just go out and issue debt without really a specific project in mind. We do have two things that we're thinking of on the horizon for possible debt. That would be the renovation at the Armory, and as well as the lumberyard, which we've been speaking to with you a number of times. So I think for both of those cases, we're really waiting for clarity on the projects and before we kind of proceed down any new debt issuance, but those are possible. Just in terms of today's borrowing environment, if you've pledged the full faith and credit of the city with our credit rating right now, you're probably looking at a 4.25% borrowing rate.
Our next milestone is implementing recommendations from rate studies. And while this milestone speaks to rate studies, I would say that rate making is really about creating a sustainable and resilient financial model that provides a level of service that the community expects from our utility infrastructure. External pressures, inflation, supply chain, and the small market we're a part of really impacts local pricing and operations. So when we're developing our financial model, we really start with the customer in mind. Our customers. So this evening you'll get to hear, just following this presentation, from our water and electric funds who've been working diligently for the past few months, even prior to the creation of this council goal, to balance some of the factors we've mentioned tonight and create a resilient financial model for 24. So hopefully you're looking forward to that presentation.
And this, I don't know if this is the last milestone that we're speaking
Yes,
to? Okay,
it is.
yep. So this is, I guess, following up with a little bit of the icing on the cake in terms of this milestone should be completed as of June 5th. When we met with council recently at a work session, we were asking for clarification on about how to best divvy out the real estate transfer tax, the short-term rental tax revenue stream that is coming in the beginning of May 1st this year. After the 70% of dedicated collections goes to affordable housing, there was 30% remaining, and we needed direction from the council on how to divvy that up. The council directed us to do the 3/4 for capital infrastructure, maintenance, and repair, with the remaining 1/4 to the general fund for environmental initiatives. That split can be changed in the future under council direction. It doesn't need voter approval.
So City Council, we just threw 4 pretty dense milestones at you, and just again, we're here tonight to ensure that these milestones are that they match your intention and are responsive to the goal of prioritizing infrastructure and maintenance of aging facilities. So we're here to take any questions or feedback you might have.
Thank you. I'll look online, guys, first.
First clarifying question is, are we separately talking about the electric and water rate study and
Yes.
financial plan?
Yes.
That's coming next? That's out of
Yes.
order a little
Yeah.
bit? Okay.
Yep.
I don't think I have any questions on the milestones then. Thanks.
Ward?
Yeah, I agree with this, and we'll see in budget season what projects we're talking about and timelines. Again, this is long-range schedule, long-range commitment to capital projects that extend past any of our elected terms. So we're making a commitment that really kind of hopefully commits future councils. Something Bill mentioned last time we were discussing this is important to me in that it's for environmental initiatives, that those be initiatives that can actually do something and are not, to quote Bill, which I think is really true, that they're not virtual signaling, that they're actually meaningful initiatives that can make a change locally. So as we're looking for that percentage of the STR tax, that we actually have some initiatives that are meaningful locally. And Bill, thanks for bringing that up last time around. I think it was a good point.
Thanks, Ward. Sam?
No, just comment. Yeah, these are definitely the tools to use, so thank you for bringing them up, and I think you covered everything. And I just wanted to clarify that all the infrastructure repairs and maintenance we're going to hear in October during the budget discussions.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was starting my list of my own: stormwater pipes, cables, new bridge, armory. It's a long list. I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, and Sam, just to be clear, you will hear kind of 2024's proposed capital expenditure along with probably a 5-year capital expenditure plan. But there are many more utility and infrastructure needs above and beyond what we can capture in a given year or in a given 5-year plan or even in a given budget. So just want to make that clear.
No, I appreciate that clarification, and yeah, short-term fixes, long-term fixes, and I'm glad we're tackling it for the long-term and the short-term. Thank you.
Yeah, a quick question for Pete. I might not have been following closely enough, but did you say the new city hall and the police department are going to be paid off?
So those 2 debt issuances were issued with 30-year terms, so they will come to completion in 2046 and 2048.
Okay.
The Parks and Open Space has a number of previous debt issuances, the majority of which will actually come to term at the end of the sunset of the original sunset date of the 0.5% tax, which was the end of 2025. So about $8.5 million of parks that will be retired by the end of 2025.
Cool, thanks for clarification.
And because the captioning is blocking those, that's the first column of 13.7 is Parks and Open Space Sales Tax.
Correct.
Second one is the COPs for the police department, that's 15.9.
Correct.
The direct placement loan electric utilities is the 930. And then City Hall is that on the end there at almost 24.
And the 930 will probably plan on retiring at the end of next year.
All right. Any other, yep.
One more thing. Does any of the infrastructure projects include what we need to do on the downtown malls?
There are probably elements from different departments that would contribute to renewing aspects of the malls. I would have to look at individual plans to give you a precise answer there.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Just a few comments perhaps. That question about the pedestrian mall is something that I think is looming over us a little bit. We had to step back from our plans and our scheduling on that. I am supportive of this as a goal because I think it is one of our base functions as a municipal government. And so I was supportive of this because I want us to keep in mind and the community to know that things like the electric line replacement that we have got to be doing, that is going on right now, needs to continue to go on. We talk about roads as our infrastructure. We have our city manager coming to us with a request for hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix a state highway that normally we would try not to be spending our own local funds for that, but we seem to have no real options outside of that. It also reminds me of water and where we are with our water storage in the future and that large project that's looming out there for us potentially. So I'm very supportive of this as a goal. I look forward to the budget season when we start talking about some of the specifics. But more than anything, it's just that we all have this as part of our overall goals so that we remember that this is a fundamental service of what we do. So that's why I was very supportive of this as a goal. I thank you for all the information towards it. I guess I'm excited to see a 5-year plan, even a 10-year plan. I think that we, just because of the timing and the aging, here we are in 2023, the systems that have been put in place have aged and they are going to need replacement and maintenance. So I look forward to seeing how we think we're going to be tackling that because that's going to be of primary importance as we go to the future. Thank you guys so much for this.
Tori, I have one more comment on this.
Yep.
If you're finished. Thank you so much. I just piggybacking on what Tori said, totally agree with all of his comments, and I would encourage this not to become an opportunity for sort of pork barrel type spending, and to really focus on the critical infrastructure projects that are facing our city in the next 5 to 10 years. That's what my interest was in supporting this goal. So making sure that water comes out of the tap when I turn on the faucet, making sure the lights turn on when I turn on the light switch, making sure that the roads are comfortable, that we have, safe roadways and bikeways and pathways and sort of the critical infrastructure elements of our city. I understand that I'm passionate about the Armory, and that's also something that you mentioned, but that's a little bit outside of the scope of this goal for me personally. Thanks.
Bill, thank you. Understand and respect that, and I think staff is aligned there. The goal, I put the goal language back up on the screen, and it kind of really focuses on what I'd call the bread and butter infrastructure of the community, and so that's the plan. I think the context of mentioning the Armory and others were just in the debt service or the potential use of debt service, but yeah, I think the spirit of the goal is captured well in this language. Hopefully you guys agree.
Agree. Thank you.
And I do hope our scorecard in Aspen looks a little bit better than the Colorado scorecard.
Perhaps.
Bill, I'd like just to comment on Bill. Bill, we decide what, where we're gonna spend the money. So if they're fork barrel or belly or superfluous, projects, it's on us. So when the budget comes around, we make those decisions. So it's up to us to make sure that doesn't happen.
Tori, I think we do beat some of the Colorado grades and some of the national grades, but not by much. But I think we have the opportunity here in this community to do it right, and we appreciate this goal.
And there's no grading on a curve for this one. Thank you guys very much for the goal update, and we can get to our last topic this evening. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor Tory. Thank you for the time. My name is Justin Foreman, Utilities Director. I have with me here Cole Langford, Utilities Business Service Manager, and a representative from Raftellus, our rate consultant, Todd Cristiano. And we're here to give an overview of the rate study and financial plan for the Utilities Department for 2024. These types of studies are industry standard as they ensure a utility can continue a sustainable and resilient level of service to all customers while responding to many factors such as emerging utility policy, program and infrastructure needs, customer growth, technology use, industry dynamics, and demand pattern changes. This team and many others that are watching intently online have been working hard for the past 9 months putting this plan together, and we'll be requesting that council provide any feedback on the proposed adjustments by the end of this presentation. So before we get into the Raftellus portion of the presentation, we wanted to remind council of how big the service territories are for each utility. Both the electric and water funds are enterprise funds, meaning they're self-supporting, government-owned, that rely on selling goods and services to operate. The green highlighted area is Aspen city limits, and the dark red boundary is served by city electric, including much of the downtown core, original town site, Burlingame, the Arc, Water Campus, streets, and the Parks Department. The water service territory is everything within the blue line, including the airport, much of Buttermilk, Red Mountain, Thunderbolt, Highlands, Eastwood, Knollwood, Mountain Valley as you head out the pass. And the water service is divided out into 7 billing areas. And so now we're going to turn over this portion of the presentation to Todd Cristiano to discuss a little bit about the Raftellus methodology and their recommendations for the utility department. It's important to note that the city and Raftellus have had an extensive relationship for over 10 plus years, and we have been working with Todd since the early 2000s. So Todd and his team understand the unique dynamics and challenges for similar utilities, not only in the United States, Rocky Mountains, but most importantly, Aspen. So Todd, please take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin, for that introduction. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Todd Cristiano. You heard the introduction. I'm going to dive right into our presentation here. Hopefully this works. Left or right?
There, I'll just.
You can do it. There you go. We completed a comprehensive electric and water cost of service study for the city this year, a 9-month process that involved several people with a lot of involvement and participation, and that made the study really successful. Our role here was to help guide the city through developing a cost of service study and developing rates that are equitable and meet the objectives of the city. Our agenda, from my portion of the agenda, is to talk at a high level about the cost allocation or cost of service process. That's kind of an industry term, cost of service, so I'll break that down. And we'll look at some of the the electric and water findings as well. Next slide. Cost service process can be divvied into 3 basic components. The first one is determining, by looking at your budget and your capital plan and debt service, all those things financially related, what is the amount of money required to provide service to your customers in a given year? We then take that number and we take all the detailed budget information, capital information, and we allocate the cost. We have to find a way to turn your budget into a way of assigning those costs to how customers place demands on the system. So there's a huge process that goes behind the scenes on that. And through that cost allocation process, we allocate it to the demand facilities or the cost facilities placed on the system. If you think about the cost of pumping, the cost of treatment, water treatment, or the cost of maintaining distribution lines, there's a cost associated with those. And different types of customers place different types of demands on the system. And as a result, they incur certain different costs to provide them service. And that's the cost allocation process. The distribution to rate components or customer classes is similar. We find these costs here that we've assigned based on how customers use the system, and we can proportion those out to the various rate components or customer classes based on their relative demand, the amount of water they use, the amount of energy they use, the peak demands they have both in water or the peak kilowatt hours they use in electric. And from that, we're able to design these rate components or these customer class rates. Next slide. So our customer service pricing objectives, when we go through that whole cost allocation process, we have to put that under the umbrella of these different or various pricing objectives. So we can ensure that what we're developing is going to meet the goals and objectives of the city and the utility as well as your customers. And we heard resiliency and sustainability. This falls under the umbrella of that revenue sufficiency and stability. We want to set rates and set our costs to where we're recovering our costs each year. And we also want to have a revenue stream that is stable, meaning if there's a wet period or a very warm period, that we want to make sure that we're still able to take in a certain amount of revenue to meet some of our expenses without having to do any drastic changes to the budget or even asking the customers for more money. Importantly, the cost service allocation process really gets to equitable distribution of costs between the various types of rate components and customer classes. We want to design rates that are defendable, that if we get challenged in court, we can stand up and say we follow the generally accepted principles of rate making and rate setting, and that Raftellus will stand behind that. And another objective is efficient water and energy use, as evidenced by the rate structures we have for the water utility and the residential electric customers. And when we talk about rate components and customer classes, I'll give a little more detail here when we talk about equitable cost distribution. Electric has availability charges in their rate structure, they have energy, and they have demand. And those are assessed to customers, residential, commercial, large commercial. And residential customers get assessed an availability charge and an energy charge. Large commercial customers get assessed those as well as a demand charge. There's only really one class in water. It's everybody. But they all get charged these 4 rate components: demand charges, which is dollar per equivalent capacity unit, a fire charge, pumping charge, and variable. The costs that go into those are based on the cost allocations. When we look at the budget each year, the capital projects, what are the costs? What's the cost required to maintain public fire protection and provide public fire protection on an annual basis? Same thing with pumping. What's the cost associated with pumping water to customers, especially up the hill. Next slide. Now, there's some industry trends and rate impacts going on. Obviously, COVID kind of threw everything in a tailspin for many utilities, and many are just beginning to recover. So it's been really challenging for some utilities to get back on the horse and get back to normal operations, especially with some of the hurdles they've had to overcome, and we're going to talk just about a few of those. Next slide. When we look at the electric industry trends, obviously continued inflationary pressures, but that's on the water and electric side. It's important to note that water and wastewater and electric utilities are some of the most capital intensive. And we had a little discussion here before about bonds and issuing debt for these long-term type capital projects. It's very capital intensive, which presents just some unique challenges from a financial standpoint. Supply chain issues continue to be a problem, maybe more so in electric than water. There are certain just different types of supply chain issues. The global economic and political climate that's made some costs just higher as a result of some of the costs required to maintain and operate a water and electric utility. And with electric, the modernization of the grid infrastructure, that's being very costly, and of course, I'm sure COVID slowed that down a bit. And many utilities are trying to transition to renewable sources, which the city has already done. So others are playing catch up. Next slide, please. And what does that say?
Addressing impacts of energy storage.
Oh, and addressing impacts of energy storage. We had a little discussion on that during the rate study. That's obviously going to change demands and could change how prices are set. That remains to be seen. Next slide. Some of the water utility industry trends. There's a publication put out every year by the American Water Works Association called The State of the Water Industry, and they've been doing this for about 15 years. They survey over 4,000 utilities and managers of those utilities, and obviously some of the biggest concerns they have are aging infrastructure, and that's nothing new. Obviously maintaining a resilient water supply, that's especially important in Colorado, and how do we fund capital improvements? And we know that the cost to maintain and upgrade infrastructure and manage water supplies continues to increase far more than inflation, and we just don't know. One day might be different than the next. And over 70% of the respondents claimed that a majority of their capital funding will come from rate increases. So it'll be cash funding those projects. Next slide. So here's some impacts on the city's utilities health. Looking back to 2021 and 22, there were some nominal increases in electric, 1% to 3% in annual adjustments in 2021 and 2022. Water had a 5% and 7% in those same years. Nobody likes a rate increase, but after working with the city of Aspen for many, many years, the important thing is that they've been smooth and steady on revenue adjustments. There was recently an article in the New York Times titled "Water Bills Are Rising, Here's What to Do About It," or what to do about it. And there was some discussion about, well, conservation measures, use less water, affordability programs, and those are all great. But really, probably the number one thing you can do to minimize high bills is to raise rates, and do it on a regular basis, slow and steady, and that's what the city's been doing for a number of years. And so that's why we've been able to help keep revenue adjustments as low as possible, as good service will permit. From 2021 to 2023, obviously the utilities expenses have increased for a myriad of reasons, 11% in electric and 15% in water. Our recommended proposed increases for 2024 for the utilities is 8.25 in electric and 8% in water. And that will recover your cost to provide service as part of the cost service process, ensure that we're allocating all those costs to the appropriate customer classes and rate components, ensure that everyone's paying their proportionate share of cost, and maintaining all those pricing objectives that we set forth at the very beginning: revenue stability, sufficiency, defensibility, and equitability. Next slide. Back to you, Justin.
Yeah, so now we're going to go into present both funds' financial plan and detail these revenue adjustments. We'll first start with electric and just kind of give a high overview. We serve approximately 3,100 meters, with the majority of that being residential customers, 983 small commercial, 43 large commercial meters. All electric accounts, again, are within city limits, mainly in the downtown core. But even though we're a small electric utility, it still takes over 250 transformers, 500 streetlights, and we still own and maintain 2 local hydro facilities. We've been serving customers since 1956, and we've been 100% renewable since 2015. If you look there on the screen, you can see some pictures of some of the most recent infrastructure improvements we're doing in the downtown core, installing the cable and conduit, getting rid of the direct bury cable that's reaching the end of its useful life. I think it really highlights how complex it is to build anything in Aspen, especially underground. So in this slide, you'll see what utility staff and Ref Telus forecast for 2024 projected revenue against 2024 total revenue requirement. I just want to highlight all the tables that you'll see today in the presentation were also in the memo package. And so to go over some of those descriptions, you know, the operating budget are those day-to-day operations and maintenance expenses to keep safe and reliable electric service to all the customers. The debt service, Pete mentioned earlier, but that will sunset in December of 2025. And then the capital and overhead expense, that's all of your design, planning, and construction. We've talked about it, but you'll see, you know, projects more in detail in October during work session, but we've been focused on replacing conduit and cable, upgrades to our switch station, and work associated with the plants at Maroon Creek and Rudai. And so that 8.25% overall revenue adjustment ensures the electric utility meets its total revenue requirement for 2024. You'll see at the bottom that the Aspen Electric has a goal to maintain 25% reserve, and that is what we are self-insured against natural disasters such as mudslides, drought, fire, shifts in climate, to protect our supply and change in customer behavior. And so Todd mentioned some of the components of the electric bill, and so in the upcoming slides we'll show what the forecasted adjustment to common customer accounts may expect for 2024. Again, KWH is how much electricity you consume. Availability charge is the customer's proportional share of infrastructure. And then the demand KW, that's for large commercial accounts only, and that's measuring the peak rate at which a service is using. And so this would be standard residential electric account, and these tables are the following tables are going to reflect theoretical average monthly costs to the various customer classes, and the intent of these tables is to demonstrate the calculated monthly change that someone may experience. And unless there's any questions, I'll go through the different classes.
John?
Quick question. Could you give me an example of large commercial?
Large commercial, yeah. So that is your large hotels. These are your large buildings, large restaurants, accounts with a lot of mechanical equipment.
Would the hospital be one, or is that outside our?
They're on
building?
Holy Cross, but
Okay.
yes, we would consider them large commercial.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so, moving along, this is the large residential class, a much larger service and many more amenities, and typically increasing their electric consumption throughout the year. And again, at the bottom would be the monthly adjustment. Small commercial, this is typically your boutiques to small restaurants. And then your large commercial, as explained earlier, your larger buildings, hotels, large restaurants. So new to the utility for 2024 is an all-electric residential rate. As electric utilities begin to meet the demands of beneficial electrification, we're proposing a new all-electric residential rate available to qualifying residential customers. And in the bullet points, we worked with the Community Development Department on some of those support language. And as beneficial electrification develops, the utility will continue analysis of consumption trends, all-electric adoption, and customer needs.
Go, John.
Just a quick question. Were there any incentives built into this structure to hopefully get people to go to all electric?
John, great question. I know that there has been conversation for the community development incentives to go all electric with their development, but we have yet to see any applications.
Thanks.
And John, I would just add, I think the incentivization is basically just a different tier structure from our regular electric rate. So an all-electric customer would move through the tiers at a different rate because theoretically they're buying more electricity, and that tiered rate structure was structured to provide a conservation-based rate for a traditional electric customer with maybe a carbon-based heating system in there.
So they're a little at odds with each other.
So yeah, conservation-based rate making with the tiers can have unintended consequences when somebody moves to a single fuel source. And so that's what we're trying to address here with this all-electric rate.
Thanks for explaining that. I think that helps everybody.
And finally, electric community investment fees. These are one-time fees assessed to a new customer connecting to the electric system or an existing customer expanding, increasing their proportional demand on the system. They are designed and collected to ensure development pays its own way. Without these fees, the costs of expanding and maintaining our electric system to meet these new and larger customer services would fall on existing ratepayers. So recommendations there on the right. If there aren't any other questions about the electric utility, we'll transition into the water utility for 2024.
We have a question from Bill, and then I'd like to see that last slide again. That was a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
I have one question, so.
Yeah. Bill, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks. My first question is on this slide. So, Justin, how are you? Could you please speak to the reasoning behind the disproportionate percentage increase in this fee versus the water tap fee? Especially in light of the inflation of expenses on water being higher than that of electric.
Hi, Bill. This is Cole. I wouldn't necessarily want to compare them like that. I mean, I think the ECI fee and the tap fee, while similar in their function, are two very different utilities, and their calculus and methodology behind it brings us to, for the ECI fee here, staff recommending this increase. I should say that in 2021, we worked closely with Todd's team and Raftelis, and we're told that to cover the cost of this, it would be close to 185% increase. So we certainly have been trying to take a more gradual approach to meeting that, and that's what's captured here in this ECI fee.
And Bill,
Cole, could you expand on that? So you're saying that the actual cost of providing any one of these services is 185% more than what it currently is?
When we looked at that, it was in 2021. So based on the rates we were charging at that time.
So Bill, I think I can help clarify the percentage increase we're seeing here versus in the rest of our rates. So traditionally, ECI fees and TAP fees are directly connected to the cost of infrastructure within our utility system. And that infrastructure related to inflation and construction cost escalation, we've seen a larger increase on that side of the utility versus some of our more traditional operations. And so to cover that higher level of increase on the infrastructure side, you'll see both the ECI and TAP fees have a larger increase than the rest of the rates. I think that's what you were asking.
Well, okay, let me be, yes, partially, but even more specifically, in the water tap fees, you are proposing increased tap fees of 8.06%, and in the electric tap fees, which that's the colloquial term for this community investment fee, you're proposing 15 and 20% increases, drastically different percentages for essentially the same function. So, assuming costs have increased to put in electric infrastructure, I think they've also increased to put in water infrastructure. One, you're saying we got to increase it by 15 or 20%. One, you're saying we got to increase it by 8.06%. Very different.
Yeah, and I think I can further clarify. Our electric infrastructure has seen even more significant cost increases than the water side. I think Cole and Justin can probably elaborate, but we've seen transformer pricing exceed maybe 300% increase in the last couple of years. Cable is probably over 100% increase. And so some of that is really driving our recommendations here.
Okay, thanks. Piggybacking on John's earlier comment here, there's no incentive for an all-electric structure built into this fee table from what I can tell. So assuming you were, let's say you're building a 5,000 square foot house, you could do 600 amp service with a natural gas heating system. If you're going to an electric heating system, you're probably at 1,000. So now you're paying a $12,000 plus premium in tap fees on that. So that might be something worth considering.
Yeah, and Bill, I think really what we're trying to capture here is that service size is proportional share of the utility. And so the larger the service size, the less it takes. Well, for an example, we can run multiple homes off of a single transformer with typical service size, 400 amp service size. Once we start getting into those 800,000 amp and larger services, it becomes one piece of infrastructure, one transformer per one customer. So their proportional share becomes larger. And so we're just trying to capture that and ensure that customer pays their proportional share, nothing more, nothing less.
Well, I appreciate that and I understand that. Maybe I wasn't clear on what I was saying is John is interested in removing barriers and incentivizing people to choose all electric homes.
Yeah.
A typical 5,000 square foot house in Aspen is already on a 600 or 800 amp service. So now you're moving up into that category of a dedicated transformer no matter what. And in order to do that, if you elect to do an all electric house, if that's feasible, right now you're not incentivized to do that in this rate structure. So I'm suggesting perhaps you consider a incentivization mechanism where you're not penalized for having to increase the size of your electric service if you choose to go all electric.
Bill, I understand what you're saying. I apologize. I think that we, as staff, we can certainly explore that. I think how we have the rate system set up as it exists today, we're recovering the expenses that we need. And so we could absolutely do that if that was council's policy direction, but it would definitely shift that cost burden to a different part of our customer class. and that's absolutely fine. It's just something from a policy direction standpoint we would need as staff.
Can I add something really quick? There are some unspoken incentives. I'd say one incentive is there's no longer a gas bill to pay if you're on all electricity. And the other part is the incentive of just trying to do the right thing for your children and for the people who are going to be here on this planet after we're gone.
I appreciate that, John. I was just speaking specifically to this
And I'm speaking for all of us.
I think that Bill brings up an interesting point. It is, it marries a couple of different goals that we have. I'd be interested to hear more about that. If it was something that was incentivizing for people to upgrade, maybe that is a policy direction that could actually help our community reach some of its other goals. So I'd be interested in hearing more about that.
I would too. Just seems like a very wicked problem.
Yeah, I have one question and then a comment on that, what Bill brought up. These are two separate enterprise funds, so the water enterprise and the electric enterprise don't balance each other out. They're supposed to be self-financed or revenue neutral for water and for electricity. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. And then to Bill's point, I think there's a thing called fee base. You charge somebody a fee if they are going to be a gas guzzler car, and you give a rebate if somebody buys a hybrid or an electric, let's say, something that gets better mileage. I think that concept is perhaps something that bears investigation. Can we have a lower rate for an all-electric? As Bill's and John are both saying that there's no incentive to go all-electric, other than John's very valid point, I think, of caring for the environment and perhaps wanting to pay more just to be better stewards of our environment. But yeah, I'm interested in looking at maybe shifting some of the, giving a lower rate for all electric and recover that by shifting some of the rates in some of the other categories there. Leave it up to you guys to come up with that, but I agree that it's something worth looking at.
My second question on this, which applies, I suppose, both to the CIF and the usage rates, is how do these rates compare to Holy Cross's rates, and how do they compare to other municipalities of our size?
So, Bill, typically when we give this presentation, we will show where Aspen sits in regards to other utilities throughout the state. At this time, that data is just coming out. So we'll be prepared to provide how that rate change looks within the October work session. But we are typically middle of the road when it comes to those rates as compared to other utilities.
This
I mean, it seems difficult for me to digest that when I'm looking. If you go back to a typical large residential example, a 600 amp service is not that big anymore, especially with electrification and preparing for future electrification. And imagining, unless I'm misunderstanding this, I think these are monthly bill numbers, right? $4,104. Imagining someone in another municipality paying almost $50,000 a year in electric charges is hard for me to believe. I understand in Aspen people can afford it, and relative to the cost of houses is one thing, but I don't think that a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot house that would warrant a 600 amp service, I just don't think someone in Glenwood Springs can afford that in a typical 5,000 square foot house.
Bill, when we have that data, we'll bring it to council. But indeed, even at the different tiers, we compare favorably to all the electric utilities and water utilities in Colorado. We're usually in the lower half of those rate structures.
Bill, in the rest of you, I think we had a 5-year, I think, period that we were going to do rate adjustments because Bill, to your point, 5 years or 6 years ago, we looked at what how we rated against other utilities in the state, and we were about almost at the bottom for charging less. And I think what we want to do is be towards the middle, but the enterprise fund, it has to pay for itself. And as I recall, this should be the 5th year of that adjustment phase. Are we looking at these is this the end of the increases to get us where we need to be?
Never.
Yes. So Ward, this is, this rate study is upcoming for 2024 through 2028, but we're really looking at this on a year-by-year basis, especially with all the unknowns that utilities are facing at this time, and that way we can be the most nimble and responses to industry changes and customer demands. But we'll always come back in real time and in October work session to provide any additional detailing and long-range planning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, Tyler, you were at the other position on the table 5 years ago. And there were some packet information that was sent out to the council that shows how we rated over the years. If it's possible, we could send that out as an info only for context and background to us to refresh our memories on where we are, where we were, and where we want to be.
Yeah, Ward, we can absolutely include that information. As Justin mentioned, unfortunately, just the timing of this work session worked out that that annual rate study of all the utility providers in Colorado is occurring, that their data request was this month. So we should have that information in probably end of September, early October. But we can certainly provide past year's information there. And then, Bill, just to go back to the large residential, I think this amount probably looks large based on the amount of consumption that we are estimating here for a large residential customer. The average residential customer in Colorado consumes somewhere around 1,200 kilowatt hours a month. So this is more than 10 times the average Colorado customer. Just from our experience, we have customers like this in our system and wanted to try to give council an accurate and transparent view of what that might look like for those types of customers. So understand that it looks large. I think this is very few of our customers, very few of our 3,000 customers that are using this much energy on a monthly basis.
Got it. So is this actually an average bill in our system, or is this an average bill based on 15,000 kilowatt hours of consumption?
This would be an average bill based on 15,000 hours of consumption with the 2024 rates applied to it.
Understood. So I'd be curious to know what the actual average bill for a 600 amp service is in our system.
We could certainly find that. It would probably be right around 15,000 kWh. But again, there's not a ton of 600 amp residential services. Cole, you got an idea of how many? 60, 90?
Yeah, that number would be exactly under 100.
Yeah, that's okay. So, what's the monthly bill amount on those 600 amp services on average? That, and I know you can't answer that on the spot, but I'm curious to know that.
Sure. Sure.
Thanks.
Any more questions on the electric? Thank you.
Move to water.
So, a high-level overview on the water system is we have approximately 4,100 meters. 2,500 of those are residential, 924 multifamily, and then the remaining 565 are commercial. The majority of the water accounts are in the downtown core under gravity fed, meaning there's no pumps required to serve a property. 85% of the accounts located are within city limits, and the remaining 15 are in Pitkin County. But I think it's important to note some data is it takes approximately 84 miles of buried water main lines. We have 2 water treatment buildings, 16 pump stations, 13 storage tank locations, 21 air releases, 14 pressure release valves, and over 600 hydrants. And so even though we're a pretty small water system compared to most, we're probably one of the most complex. So it takes a lot of infrastructure to serve here in a mountain community. And we have been serving customers since 1966. So again, utility staff and Reftelis have put together the 8% adjustment forecast for 2024 projected revenue against 2024 total revenue requirement. Much in the same, the operating budget is the day-to-day to make sure safe and reliable water service to customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Capital, you'll learn more in the October work session, but we're focusing on the aging infrastructure, pipe replacement, the forthcoming water campus improvements. Much of the water utility is 40+ years old. And again, the water has a 25% reserve to self-insure against natural disasters to protect our supply and changing customer behavior. So we will go over some example customer bills, just like the electric, but the components of your water bill is the variable charge. So that's your monthly water consumption billed in 1,000-gallon blocks in a 4-tier rate. Your demand charge is a monthly fixed charge based on your equivalent capacity unit in billing area. And so a lot of folks ask what a equivalent capacity unit is, and so that is a unit that is part of the capacity of the water system necessary to serve a standard water customer. And so that's the number of water fixtures you have, how much you're irrigating, certain cooking facilities you have, and other water demand factors. And so it's common for water utilities to have something called an equivalent capacity unit. They just may call it something else. And then fire protection, that's your hydrants and various infrastructure to fight fires. And then your pumping charge, so that is not all customers, and you'll see some examples with and without that. And so that's your pumping stations and storage tanks and that infrastructure to serve those customers. And so on the screen here is a theoretical example of expected adjustment between 2023 and 2024 for just a residential customer in the downtown core. And this would be a residential customer outside of city limits, Red Mountain, that does have that pump charge, a little bit higher ECUs, one pump, using 50,000 gallons seeing that monthly adjustment there of $53.20. Commercial account, adjustment there, 10.5 ECUs and 100,000 gallons, so pretty large demand on the system there. And a slight adjustment that the water utility is proposing in 2024 is in regard to our block tier rates. And so the block tier rate has the intention of promoting conservation and responsible consumption with this finite resource. And so we've made small adjustments to the tiers. The intent is to keep 75% of the water usage within the first and second tiers. And as accounts transition into that tier 3 and 4, it's like to use price signals for that above normal excessive use, almost always because of irrigation. And finally, the utility investment charge recovers certain capital costs allocated to new and expanded customers. This is based on your ECU and the billing area factor, and these are one-time fees. And again, just like the ECI fees. And so the department is proposing a 8.06% increase for the year 2024. And so with that, open it up to any questions you have about water or anything else about the presentation or 2024.
Yeah, just a quick question about the previous slide.
Yeah.
So billing areas, would it be possible to get a map of the billing areas in the next, our next work session on this?
Yeah, sure.
I'm guessing billing area number 1 is the core or downtown? Okay.
Yeah, John, we originally had the 7 service areas on that second page map, but thought it was too busy, so.
Understood. It was a little busy.
Yeah, we'll get that for the October presentation.
Cool. No big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, Bill?
No, thank you.
All righty. Sam?
Quick question on what's being done for the $90 million in pipe replacement and the $40 million in cable replacement. Those numbers jumped out to me on this packet, and was just wondering what's happening there.
Yeah, so that recent analysis, Sam, that's a great question. So that's showing a backlog of projects that need to be completed. Some of those are, we're incrementally having those put into our capital improvement, but we don't have all that 90 million and all that 40 million within the next 5 years. We're going to space those projects out.
Okay, so we're going to be okay, but we're going to do it over a number of years, and we're going to fix those problems as we can.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think I'd said earlier that, we start our rate making process with a customer in mind, and so that kind of goes twofold. It's not only the rate impact to the customer, but it's the level of service impact to the customer. So our infrastructure replacement is generally going at a pace that we believe our customers and rates can keep up with, and so where we're not replacing capital infrastructure, we're doing our best to maintain and extend the useful life of those assets. So it's a combination of operations and capital spend. And then there may be times that, that's why in your council goal, there was that element of debt service, because there may be times where a lot of infrastructure comes of age at the same time, and we have to increase that capital spend in a given year or given period of years. So I think all those tools are at our disposal to address these infrastructure questions as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to hear that. And kind of expected there to be a time where it was potentially needed to do some more in a certain year than other years. So, thank you.
I don't see any other questions for you on this.
Well, thank you, council and mayor. I know this is a complex topic and easy to get into the weeds on, and we appreciate your time and support and recommendations.
So City Council, I'll just add really quickly, we're scheduled to be back in front of you in mid-October for our budget work session on this, and so some of the comments, suggestions, recommendations, we will add to the presentation and do some analysis and return to you at that point.
Thank you for that. You know, it could have gone without saying, but Tyler, you know how sensitive all councils are to rate increases for our community. We try to balance this along with one of our council goals, which is infrastructure. And so the questions that you had tonight are reflective of those concerns, and you've heard them before. So I will look for some more information. The only things that I would say is, as always, I'm looking at the smallest users feeling least impact. I'll be looking to talk about that more during budget. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your information and your work on behalf of the city of Aspen. Thank you.
Thanks,
We want to say thank you to GrassRoots. We have a regularly scheduled meeting tomorrow, which means we start at 5 p.m. with public comment. So if you want to address council on any items not scheduled for public hearing on tomorrow's agenda, we'll see you here in City Hall at 5 o'clock.